These are all swatches. Do you remember this? It took so many swatches to figure out this sweater. Hey everyone, it's Natalie, also known as Knitty Natty. Welcome to episode 157 of the Love and Stitches podcast. Today is Tuesday, I think it's November 8th. I'm not really sure. It's a beautiful day here in New York City. We have had an unseasonably warm last week. Yesterday it was in the mid 70s and I was sweating outside. It was great though because I got to knit on the way to and from Pilates, which I love doing when it's warm enough to do so. And today it's kind of gone back to like the 50s, I think, but it's beautiful and sunny and clear outside, which is so nice because we've had lots of gloomy days in the past, especially whenever I've been recording the podcast. I feel like the last 2 weeks have been gloomy podcast days. I'm not wearing any knitting today because it's still a little bit warm inside, but I do have my Brooklyn General Store t-shirt on, which I tend to wear like once per week, which I love. Okay, so a couple things before we dive in. The first project that I'm going to talk about today is going to be the Twists and Turns shawl. Not immediately, but once I start the projects, there will be a timestamp so you can skip ahead if you have not seen the end of it, because mine is done. And I'm going to show the ending and how I changed things and all of that like first project. So just to warn you. And then the second thing is I have something to celebrate with you all. I have hit a milestone here on YouTube of 25,000 subscribers, and I don't know, I haven't thought about it too much until today, honestly. I knew it was getting close to that, but I don't know, it's such a funny thing because whenever I do hit milestones, and you know, subscribers and followers and things are not the most important measurement when you are working in like content creation, but they are something to look at. And so I wasn't paying close attention until it was getting close. Anyway, but when you do hit those milestones, it kind of makes, at least for me, it makes me think back to when I had just started. And I remember when I chose to do a podcast, somebody I was watching was Kay, who's the Crazy Sock Lady, which some of you may know. And I just remember like, I don't know how big she was then, but I loved watching her. And then I feel like she's one of those people who is maybe like several steps ahead of me in this process on YouTube at least. And so those are always the people that I'm like looking at. So I remember when Kay hit like 20,000 or something like that, 20,000 subscribers. I think she's got like 40 now or something. But anyway, I remember when that happened and just being like, wow, I don't know if I'll ever be there, but that would be really cool. And now here we are at 25K, and just thank you so much. Just in case you didn't know this, because YouTube is a free platform, there are ways that YouTube like knows that people like watching somebody's videos, and subscribing is one of those free ways that you can support a content creator and tell YouTube, hey, I like these videos. It doesn't cost you anything except a little bit of time to like sign in on one of your devices and hit the subscribe button, but it really is an important measurement and why people will like often say like to subscribe in videos. You're like, why are they saying like, comment, and subscribe? That is exactly why, because it really does help. So I want to do something to say thank you. So I have a beautiful skein of yarn that I'm going to be giving away. And this yarn I bought a couple weekends ago. Well, I guess it's like a month ago now. Almost. It was Rhinebeck weekend in the middle of October. And Sorella, who I really just adore, Ashley. It was really cool. I got to meet her, but she was doing a trunk show at the Perfect Blend in, I think that was in Saugerties, New York, which is around Rhinebeck. And it was so cool. So I got some Sorella yarn and I picked out this beautiful skein, mostly because I thought I was going to use it as a giveaway. I love this color. It's from her Autumn in New York collection. I'm sorry, it's from her, I think it's called the New York collection, but this color is actually called Autumn in New York, and it is a beautiful color. It is a 75% superwash merino wool, 20% nylon, and 5% gold stellina. Fingering weight, it's a 2-ply, and it's 438 yards. So you can definitely do something amazing out of it. Super soft, but I got this one because I thought it was just so quintessentially that weekend, like autumn in New York. What a perfect color. Knowing that it wasn't exactly my color, but I felt like it would be just representative of that weekend and that time. And then I got to do so many things. I got to shop and buy and feel a yarn that I've never gotten to feel in person, support a small business, and then now I get to give it away and make somebody else happy. So that makes me happy. Okay, so how can you win this skein of yarn? If you will leave a specific comment here on this video, and I'm gonna pick the winner before I record next week's podcast, which is typically on Tuesdays. So think about, within that time frame. But I would love for you to leave a comment telling me your weekly win. Weekly wins is how I wrap up all of my podcasts and I share something big or small that has happened within the previous week that I'm proud of myself for, or I feel like was a great thing to accomplish, because especially as a perfectionist, which I would say that I have perfectionist tendencies, it's really easy to look at all the things that need to improve and change, and it's much harder to look at the things that are going well and that you can be proud of yourself for. So please, leave a comment telling me your weekly win, big or small. I'm gonna be sharing mine at the end of the episode, and I will randomly select a comment that has that weekly win information in it, and you may win this beautiful prize. I'll remind you again at the end of the episode, thank you again for helping support this channel and helping this to become a full-time business for myself and for Kent. It's just been amazing. And for Toaster, he's here too. He says, thank you. Oh wait, don't look at that. Don't look at that yet. All right, I think that's enough of the intro. So let's dive right into projects. And remember, the first one is gonna be twists and turns. Oops, just kidding. I have one more thing for the intro before we get into projects. In this video, I'm gonna be showing you how I fixed my Alpenglow sweater by cutting off the ribbing, knitting a little bit more, and then reattaching the ribbing. That's gonna be later on in my quick tip section after projects, but I do have a timestamp down in the description box. Okay, now we can seriously move on to the projects. All right, last warning to click away, click ahead to the timestamp that's gonna be down below and go on to the next project. I have several projects to talk about today, which I'm excited about. But the first one is gonna be Twists and Turns by Stephen West. So this has been pretty much the bulk of everything that I've been talking about for the last several weeks, because I started it on October 6th when the first clue came out, and then every subsequent Thursday there's been a new clue for 4 total weeks. And if you haven't done a mystery shawl before, it is a wild ride because you don't know what it's gonna look like, you don't know what the final shape is gonna be. It's a lot of trust and a lot of knitting for something that you're not quite sure how it's gonna turn out. I also recorded a vlog because during that time, I was like, I just need to talk about this, and I want to talk about it in the moment and like when I was feeling those things. So part 1 came out last week, but part 2 just came out. So if you haven't caught up on that, you can watch part 2. They are very long vlogs, so they're kind of like podcasts where you might want to have them on like in the background while you're knitting on your project or cleaning or doing something else. But I did include timestamps and chapters for those if you want to like skip ahead, like, oh, I just want to see like clue 4 or see the end or see the math or whatever. I have those in those videos. Okay, so I'm done. I'm finished and it feels so good. I will say when I first finished, I didn't get really a sense of like, I'm finished. I felt kind of like, oh, I'm finished. I thought I would feel more accomplished. But the next couple of days when I like all of a sudden didn't feel like pressure to sit down and do all this knitting, and I just kind of like was able to feel some space in finishing up the shawl and then starting new projects, it felt really, really good. So I'm super proud of myself for finishing this. Let's talk about the yarn real quick. Since this is going to be the last time I'm showing this shawl, we'll go over the yarn one more time. So all of my yarn was from Walk. I did get a kit, but I ended up replacing one of those colors. So my main color is Pink Candy, and I really liked this yarn. It's a single ply, 100% merino. See you later, don't need that label anymore. I put all of my yarn information into Ravelry, so this is why I don't hang on to labels or anything. And then my my contrast color was called Powder Same Base by a Twister has not made a move even though I'm throwing stuff in his direction. My accent color was a slightly different base and merino linen, and I really didn't notice, like, it looks a little different. There's like these little kind of flecks in there that you can tell are the linen. It really didn't make a difference in the knitting or in the blocking of it. Like, it all pretty much looks the same, but this was gifted to me from my friend Diane, who is Suburban Stitcher. She had this yarn in her collection. It's called Stone, and I used this to replace the accent color that came with my kit because I just wasn't a huge fan of it. That has already since been given away to somebody else. You know, it's all about, it's a cycle. Somebody gives me yarn, I give yarn to somebody else. It goes and goes. So are you ready to see it? I'm so excited. I have many things to say. I'm not going to go too long-winded since I have 2 super long vlogs on this, but just in case you're only here watching the podcast, you gotta get a sense of everything. So here's my finished twists and turns. Okay, let's start over here on the right. Make our way across. Here's the center. And then the other side is a mirror image. And let's get in here really close. So we've got this crazy little twisty section. All kinds of stuff. We got these cables with these little I-cords in them. This was like the worst week of my life with knitting. I'm just kidding. Here's the bottom. And then I added on these really fun tassels. I've cleaned them up since posting that vlog. So this is what they look like now. In the vlog, I had used shorter ties and I cut them and they were like sticking out. That looked really not clean and finished. And so I've since fixed that and it is totally done. Totally finished. Except for I need to get some like pictures of it, I think. Feels so good to have it finished. Oh my gosh, it's very big. I kind of like this where I've just got one side of it forward. I think that looks kind of cool because it is just so big. But let's chat about it. So this was a ton of knitting. Nearly 100 hours of knitting over 4 weeks, which is wild. I didn't quite accomplish the goal that I had of like finishing each clue each week before the next clue came out, but you'll see in that part 2 where I kind of had a revelation of like, it's okay that that is not happening, even though that was my goal. It was a journey. But I did finish it before, I think I finished it like, bound it off 1 night before the end of the 4th clue or something. I don't know. I mean, not the 4th clue. I'm getting all twisted around, literally twists and turns. You know what? Just go watch the vlog for the full journey, but I did get it all finished and I made some changes to the very end. So what I changed, now I'm sitting on it. What I changed is on the bottom here, I opted for the early finish. So you'll see some others that have like a continuation of these 2 colors alternating. I did not really care for that, so I didn't do that option. And I did the early bind off, which was in the pattern, but instead of binding off in my main color, I bound off in my accent color. I also did not attach my loops as indicated in the pattern. Instead, the only way these loops are attached, at least in the middle, is that my tassel goes through, like it's connected through the yarn over holes in the accent color and this, which I think looks a lot more even than the way that you sewed them down or like picked up the stitches, just didn't look right. And then for the edge ones, I sewed each of the adjacent sections and I left this part just like open. So it's not gonna come back through because it's sewed and attached to these, not gonna come back through here. But then my tassel just goes through that loop on either side. I do have details on how I made the tassels in that vlog, so definitely go there, look for that chapter on tassels. It will tell you how I did it. But it turned out so great. I'm so pleased with this finish. I love it. I really do love it. I'm so happy with it. I'm happy I did it, and I feel like I learned a lot about myself as a knitter along the way. I feel like this whole year I'm just like constantly like trying things and reflecting on them and thinking like, is this the knitter that I want to be? And the answer to that is it's always evolving, so that's all right too. but there's so much in that vlog if you can make it through it. Okay, I wanted to share my yarn leftovers. Now, I probably have a lot less than some others just because I used a lot of yarn in the tassels. Each tassel used about 8 grams of yarn. So my main color, you can see I used up almost to the end of that. I just wound all these up like nice and put it in a Ziploc bag. I am not planning on hanging on to this yarn. Like, this is not gonna serve me any good to hang on to this. I know myself and how I use leftovers, and these types of leftovers don't fit well into my project reuse. So I put it in a Ziploc bag, and I thought that I might just take it to the Salvation Army the next time I have some other things to donate, and maybe somebody will be able to pick it up and like do a little bit of knitting or crochet with it or another kind of project. I don't really know, but that feels better than like throwing these away in the trash. And I don't feel like I need to hang on to these and then like have that guilt of them just sitting in my drawer. Like, that does nobody any good. So I'd rather just send them off to a donation and hopefully somebody can use them. That's my thoughts. That's my thoughts on that for now, unless I find a better solution. But there you go. It's all done. I'm so proud of it. It feels so nice and soft. It's blocked. It's amazing. And it's gonna go away now into my finished object drawer, which is becoming very messy again. I think I did a video in the springtime and like cleaned out the drawer, and it's a mess again. I need to go back through it and reconsider some of the things that I hung on to and didn't wear and just get it all figured out. But anyway, so I'm just gonna fold this guy back up. So proud of him, her, whatever, and toss that off to the side. So that's it for the shawl. You're safe to come back now. I'm not gonna show the shawl again. And we're gonna move on to the next thing. I actually have a second finished object to show you. I almost have 3 in this episode, which is pretty great. Wait, where did it go? Oh, here it is. Hold on, it's kind of stretched out over here. Okay, so I have finished, like literally moments before I started recording this podcast, I finished Ken's hat. And I left the marker in there because I'm pretty proud of how much knitting I was able to do on it on the last week. But let's talk yarn. This is Charming You, my first time using Charming You. I got it in at the DFW Fiber Fest on the Suki sock base, which I believe is a 75-25, yeah. And this color is called Escalante. But the reason that Kent picked out, see, we're tossing this again because I don't need it anymore. The reason that Kent picked out this color is because he really likes the Miami Dolphins, and he was like, that looks like the Miami Dolphins to me. So he picked this out. So I kept my marker in. I haven't washed or blocked this yet. I mean, I think you can kind of tell. It will definitely relax a bit. This is a much larger hat than it looks with all the ribbing, but I left the marker in because I just got so much done on it last week. I think because really I was just focused on doing a few things for the end of my West Knit shawl and then kind of wrapping up other projects before starting new ones. I just had a lot of time where I was like, I need some simple knitting, and I just booked it through on this. And as soon as I was seeing like the end in sight, like, oh, I only have an inch until the decreases, I just couldn't stop working on it, and I wanted to get it finished. So I did. So this pattern was a free pattern on Ravelry that's no longer available. I've also made a lot of changes to it. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's a 2x2 rib hat, except for the decreases. So I adapted the original pattern from having 4 decrease points to 5, and I've written that all up in my project page. It's not the like most perfect notes, but you can go in there and kind of see what I've done. Now, what's interesting is I was supposed to knit this on 160 stitches. I thought that I cast on 160 stitches until I did the first decrease round. Tell me if this has happened to you before. I did the first decrease round, I get to the end, and I don't have enough stitches to do that final, like, however many I had to knit. I think it was like knit like 30 or 28 or something. Yeah, I was short 4 stitches. So I knit this entire hat 4 stitches short. It's totally fine. It still fits Kent. Actually, we have a video of Kent wearing it so you can see what it looks like on Kent. He loves it. Here, I'll show it on me. It's a little too big for me. Yeah, it's like a lot too big for me. When Ken folds it up, it's like an inch, but when I fold it up, it's like 4 inches. It's wild how different our heads are though. But yeah, it turned out really, really great. I made Kent a few hats like this. No, I've made him at least one hat with this ribbing pattern, and my brothers, I've made hats for them too. But where was I? I don't know. I only had 156 stitches the whole time. So the way that I like reconciled for that is when I did my whole first like set of decreases, I just didn't do decreases on like the very last repeat. So then after I finished, you know, the rest of the decreases, I did a whole repeat of those where it decreased 4 stitches, I think, in every segment. Everything was back on track. They had the same number of stitches, and then I carried on the decreases. You can barely tell, like, see how this decrease starts down here and this one starts up here? This was the area where I had 4 fewer stitches. So I just didn't do decreases until I had the same number as the rest of the segments. And when he's wearing it, you cannot tell at all. I'm gonna take out the marker now because I need to block this for him so it's all ready to go. Now, I did something else on this hat for the first time that I've never done before, and that was to split my skein of yarn in half. I then did helical knitting, which is a technique where you knit like 1 row stripes, but I did this for the purpose of kind of balancing out any of those orange blips in here. Because I had a hat, actually I have it right here. It's a totally different dyer, but I feel like the yarn has, I don't know, I'm not a dyer, so I don't know, but I feel like the yarn has similar vibes where like there's blips of color, but then look how this one turned out. Just a continuous spiral until the stitch count changed, and then it did like that all over part. So this is gonna be potentially ripped out later, but I didn't want to do the same thing and expect different results, so I tried something new and I did helical knitting on this whole hat. So I had one skein where I pulled from the inside, which is why this one looks like a mess. I just took it out of its cozy and I'm gonna rewind it into a ball. And then the other half of the skein where I wound from the outside, so I was coming from opposite ends of the skein. I don't know if that makes a difference or not, if it was purposeful or not, but it did come out great. And I don't know, I don't have a way, I do have a way to test it, but I'm not going to. That would be to make another hat and just not do the helical knitting. But it really did come out great. And I feel like the orange is like evenly dispersed throughout. It did start to do something a little different as I started to decrease, which is totally normal when your stitch count changes, when your pattern changes, the way the yarn is going to look changes, but I think it still stayed quite even. And I continued to do helical knitting all the way till like the last couple of rows when my like second skein came back around to the beginning of the round and I only had a few rows left. I was like, okay, I'm done doing helical knitting and I'll just use one skein. But yeah, it all just worked out great. Really happy with it. Kent's very excited that it's done. He has been begging me to make this since we got the yarn in late September. So it did take me a little while to get it done, but I think he's very happy with it. So I'll get it washed just so the stitches can relax and these decreases can look a little bit better and dried. And it's only 50 something degrees, so it's really not quite cold enough for Kent to need a hat anyway. So I think my timing couldn't be better. So I'm not worried about it. So that means I've got one Kent hat out of 3 requested hats done. So there you go. That one is all finished. Oh, and I'm hanging on to this yarn for now. I have, oh yeah, that's what I meant to say. I have 50 grams remaining. So that means I only used about 50 grams. I did not weigh the skein before. So I don't know if it was a true 100 gram skein or like some other hand dyed yarns. Sometimes it's like 102 or 104 grams. But I would say around 50 grams. However, since I had that error in stitch count, I would say to err on the side of needing like 60 or more grams for this hat if you're knitting it in the same way that I am with my notes that I have. So I'm gonna have that information on my project page because I know for myself that will be useful in the future if I ever have a really great color that I love and I wanna just make a hat, you know, either for somebody or to donate. I'll know if I have enough yarn, and I would say around 60 grams is good for that. That is not all I worked on this week. I still have several more things to show you. So this one I didn't do a whole lot of knitting on, but this right here is an adapted muscle burrow by Isolde Teague. And this has come up several times, but now that my other hat is complete, this one has now been moved into the slot of full attention for out and about knitting. So I'm hoping to really crush this and do a lot of knitting on this here over the next couple of weeks. But let's show the yarn real quick. This is a custom dye from Rain's Obsessive Stitchery, excuse me. And it is Victory Park and the Hanger. I haven't started in on the other color quite yet, but it is gonna be the same as this hat. So here is an adapted muscle burrow where I've done ribbing, 1x1 ribbing on the first half. And then when I get to the second half and I use this yarn that I was just showing, I'm gonna split it in half and I'm gonna test out knitting helically again, like I just did on the other hat. And hopefully it won't look like this big giant spiral. Nothing wrong with this. I just am not a fan myself and I'd rather it look more spread out like this one. So I'm gonna test it here on this hat, and if all goes well, I will be ripping that other hat out, half of it, and redoing it a little bit. This is tricky because I only have this much green yarn left and I cannot order more. So I'm kind of having to play a little bit of a game of like, how much can I knit and is it worth it and whatever. So I'm figuring that out. So the one that's finished is my size and this one is Kent's size. So this is Kent hat number 2. The other one I haven't started on yet and I need more yarn for. But I did only knit on this like an inch this week because we went to the movies. And when knitting in the dark, I cannot do helical knitting because I can't see where to stop and start. I guess I could maybe start doing it if I have a stitch marker, but that sounds a little complicated. So I had this because it's just one single skein and it is 1x1 ribbing. So once I get to this half of it, I won't be able to do that anymore, but that's all right. I'm kind of thinking like I need to start another project that is good for knitting in the dark. And I have one more like skein left in my stash that's just, there's no plans for it right now. So I'm like, okay, maybe I should start just one more muscle burrow because I just love those hats and have one for just in the dark knitting. Like it's not a priority project by any means. It's just a good project that I can grab when I need to have the simplest knitting possible. So that's something on my mind, but did put a few rows in on that one. And then I also swatched for a new project. So I am planning to make the Diaphanous Raglan by Jessie Made Designs, and I would love to show you my yarn. I got all my yarn wound this week, which preparing for a project is a part of the project that we don't always consider as like actual knitting, but it totally is. Like it took me time to go through the pattern. It took me time to wind up all of my yarn. I've got this in a 3 skein float tote because I know I'm gonna need 3 of the skeins at once. I'm not gonna need this one the whole time. So that one I might just set aside, but I know I'm gonna need the 2 slub yarns and the mohair. I think that's right. It may be the other way around, but anyway, I can rearrange things. And I have the needle that I swatched on in here. So right now it's just all sitting because I'm still in the swatching stage, but I did, oh, I need to show you what the yarn is, sorry. This is Chelsea Luxe, and this was a duet skein, which means it actually came with 2 skeins, one of the mohair and one of the slub. So the slub is called Cobblestone, the mohair is called Mohair, and this color is Grace and Pearl. It is a exclusive colorway to the shop Grace and Pearl in New Jersey, and I got it this year at the New Jersey Yarn Crawl. Okay, all of that to say that I knit a swatch. The swatch or the pattern indicated to do a flat stockinette stitch swatch holding both yarns together. Now, here's the thing. The pattern itself is not for slub yarn. It is for a fingering weight and a lace weight, which is the mohair. So I have used a fingering weight slub in replace of like a smooth fingering weight yarn. And I am already running into issues. I don't know if it's the yarn that's the issue or me and the designer just have drastically different gauges, but I did not get gauge on this swatch. So what I do when I'm swatching is I try to knit the swatch as close to the pattern as possible. So I would have knit my swatch in the round because I believe the sweater is joined in the round, but it said to knit it flat. So I'm gonna follow the instructions for the pattern because that's the way that the designer swatched. So I swatched with the 2 yarns held together, and instead of using, I think it recommended a size 7, I went ahead and went down to a size 6 because for me, I'm usually always having to go down 1 to 2 needle sizes. I think I'm just a looser knitter. But what was interesting is, once I knit the swatch, I blocked the swatch, I let it fully dry, and then I measure it. And I never measure from end to end of the swatch because you can't rely on these edge stitches. They curl up, they are not the same as regular stitches. Instead, I'll measure over the center 2 or 3 inches and then just divide to get my stitches per inch. And then same thing, I'll like kind of move around, never too close to the bind off or the cast on. And then same thing for the row gauge. I'll go up here, I'll go down here, I'll go up here, and just try to find, you know, the most accurate measurement, especially for a yarn like this where it's nubby and a little bit different. It's hard to find like very accurate measurements. So I'm like distracted. The sun is reflecting in crazy. So my gauge ended up being the stitch gauge was too big by like a half a stitch per inch, but that's significant when it's not that many. And then my row gauge was too small by 2 rows per inch. That's a lot. I think I'm getting this right, but I think it's supposed to be like 5 stitches per inch and 6 rows or something like that. And I'm getting 4.5 stitches per inch and 8 rows. So on the one part of it, on the row side or on the stitch side, I'm too big, but on the row side, I'm too small. So I don't really know what to do there because I can't really change the way that I knit and be looser this way. But I also don't want to have too big of stitches. So what I'm probably going to do, I need to think about this a little more, and I just did the swatch and then I had other things on my mind, so I haven't really gotten back to it yet, but I do want to start this week. So I'm probably going to do another swatch and go down 1 more needle size to see if I can get the stitch gauge. And then if I am able to achieve the stitch gauge, I'm going to see what my row gauge is from there and how that will affect the pattern, because it will affect the pattern, especially this one where it's a raglan. So if I have way fewer stitches per inch than the designer does, when I do my raglan increases, it's all going to be like in a shorter span, whereas the designer has it in a longer span. So I'll have to see if this is even going to be doable with this yarn. I really hope that it is, because I think this is going to be so cool. I'm still like not sure if this is a good color for me. I mean, that's what's really difficult, is because I think I know the answer to this. If I went to the store, I probably wouldn't buy something that's this color, that's like sort of that beige color. I'm much more comfortable with like a cream or a white because it's more contrasting to my skin tone, whereas this I think might be a little bit like, you know, wash me out a little bit. What do you think? It's hard because I really want to make this and I really want to knit with this yarn, but it would be silly to put all this time into something that's not going to look good on me. And it would be better to say, you know, if it's not going to work for me, to give it to somebody who it would look really great on. So I don't know. What do you think? Because I would like to knit it, but I got to figure out my gauge issues. I also noticed something. This is my first time knitting with slub. So see all the little nubbies there? And then see how there's way more here on the purl side? They just seem to naturally want to move to the back. And I asked about this on Instagram and several people said you can push them through, kind of like baubles, but I didn't find them to move like baubles. Like baubles are different because you stop and you like knit the bauble and it's like this concave thing that can be pushed through, but the nubs, not so much. But then after my swatch was done, I kind of played with it and I realized that I actually can push the nubs through to the right side. It kind of pulls on the stitches a little bit, but it doesn't really look bad. I think just because things are uneven. I'm gonna pull a couple through here. So this just may be like an after the fact kind of thing, which is a little frustrating because I think during the knitting part of it, trying to keep the nubs forward is going to be a little sloppy, but pulling them through afterwards might be more effective. I don't know, I'm gonna have to play with this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I just pulled a few more forward and I think it's fine. But anyway, so swatch is done. One swatch number 1 is done, but more needs to be done on that project before I can consider actually starting it and casting it on. Still very excited about it. 2 questions to answer. Can I get a good gauge that can actually work for the sweater? And am I gonna look okay in this color, good enough that I'm gonna like the finished product? So there we go, TBD TBD for the next week. All right, we have one more thing to talk about. And this is a repair. So I finished my Alpenglow sweater. Let me show that. Alpenglow 1 by Andrea Mowry. I finished it on October 6th. I looked back on Ravelry. I didn't like memorize that or anything, but I finished it on October 6th. I then wore it to Rhinebeck and decided that it was too short. So I've got a picture here that shows me wearing it next to my friends who theirs all looks like more proportionally right, I think, on them. So I decided I needed to make this a little bit longer for it to be good for me to be happy wearing it and feel comfortable wearing it. Of course, it was wearable already, but I was wearing high-waisted jeans in that photo and it was still like showing my stomach, which I don't care about that so much. I mean, I don't love it, but it was more just that I didn't think it looked right on me. So I decided to add 2 inches to it. I didn't know if I was gonna add 1 inch or 2 inches. Where is it? Here we go. So I added 2 more repeats. So before, this ribbing was right up here. And I put in some needles, I cut this off. I then knit all of this to add on, and then I reattached this sweater. And I reattached the ribbing, and it worked. I'm so excited. It was more difficult than I thought, but I am going to show you how I did it. So that brings me to our next segment, which is a quick tip. It's not super fast, you know, I'm long-winded, but I'm gonna show you exactly what I did to lengthen this sweater. And at the end of the tutorial, we'll come back and I will show you what it looks like on. All right, so here is the plan. I want to make this longer, but I don't want to have to re-knit all of this or take out this tubular bind off. It was knit in this direction from the top of the sweater down to the bottom. So that's the direction that I have it going right now. So my plan is to pick up stitches in this section here where it's all just like plain stockinette. I'm gonna pick up stitches a couple of rows away from this last colorwork section and a couple of rows away from this section so that I have live stitches here and live stitches here with a few rows in between. And I'm going to do that so that I can cut in between those needles, and I want to have 3 rows of safety so that I have basically a 1 row buffer and I can try to cut in that like middle row, and I'm going to show you that, I promise. Once the pieces are separated, I'm then going to knit, this will be off. I'm going to knit an extra, I can't decide if I'm going to do 1 or 2. I think I'm leaning towards another 2 inches because I kind of want to just do like 1 inch, like one repeat of this, but I'm worried if I do that, it'll be just too short and I don't want to have to do this again. So I'm kind of thinking I'll add 2 inches onto the sweater. It is a pretty short sweater, and that will cover me. So once I've knit on, then I'm gonna bring this piece back, remember it'll be separated, and I'm gonna graft the 2 sections together. This is all a theory, so I'm really hoping that it works. So we're gonna start by picking up stitches, and I have 4 32-inch size 1 needles here. I think using a smaller needle than I was knitting on, which honestly at this point, I'm gonna have to look at my Ravelry page. I don't remember what size needle I was using, but using a smaller needle is gonna be helpful to pick up the stitches. And I've got 4 of them because this is a, sweaters are kind of wide. So I'm basically going to use 2 needles here on this side and then 2 needles like on the back side of the sweater because I'm picking up stitches in 2 places. So let's get that started. So I'm going to be picking up stitches. Let's see if we can get some stitch definition here. So close. It's so dark. It's so hard to see, but I'm going to pick up stitches. I'm going to leave 2 rows, 2 plain rows, and then pick up stitches. And then I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, and pick up another row of stitches. I want to leave 3 rows in between where I can cut. Now I was going to go around and place stitch markers to keep myself lined up on the same row, but I realized I don't need to do that because I have these little slip stitch things. It's going to be super easy for me to just follow that along. Okay, so how do you pick up stitches in this situation? So it's actually kind of like an afterthought heel if you've ever done that before. So I'm going to be looking for 3 rows above. Man, this is so hard to see. I'm sorry. It's so hard. It's so dark. But I'm going to be looking 3 stitches above these. So that's 1, 2, and 3. That's where I'm going to pick up. And I'm picking up the right leg of this stitch. You know how a knit stitch is a V? I just want the right leg of it, just like that. And then I'm going to skip over the left leg of that stitch and go to the right leg of the next stitch, just like this. And I've got a really good tutorial on just this technique alone that I will link because this is really hard to see. But as you can see, once you get the hang of it, you just carry along, picking up stitches like this. And every so often I'm going to check and make sure, when I get to one of these, 1, 2, 3, I'm 3 rows above that section. And if you're wondering, wow, she's so fast at that, I wonder why. It's because I've had to frog a lot of things and do a lot of afterthought heels. All right, so that's enough of that. I'm gonna go all the way across this half of my sweater picking up stitches. Okay, beautiful. We have picked up stitches all the way across. I'll do the same to the other side of the sweater, just not yet. And don't worry too much about this, stitches in between, because once you pick up all the way around the sweater, you can check to make sure you've gotten all your stitches. I'm just going to do one side at a time for now and pick everything up before I cut. So now it's time to come in and pick up my second set of stitches. So now I'm picking up a second set of stitches that's going to be 3 rows above this one so that I can cut in between them. And this is going to be so safe for me to do because I'm going to have a direct line, like a tunnel, where I can cut, and I'm leaving 3 rows so that I can try to cut on that middle row. I mean, I've never done this before. We're going to see how it works. But what that should leave me with when I cut is all this part of the sweater, the body of it. That's what I'm actually going to be knitting on, safe and on needles. And then this part of the sweater, safe and on needles and waiting for me to come and graft it later. So now that we've got this nice, beautiful, I love that this is standing out because it's red. I can come and I can go 3 rows above it. I'm actually going to go 4 rows above it, I guess, because I want to leave 3 rows in between. So I'm just going to start right here. I've got these stitches here. I want to count 3 rows and then pick up above that. So here is 1, 2, 3, and I want to pick up right above that. Again, leaving 3 rows in between the 2 pickups. And I can just kind of go along, picking things up. And every once in a while, just stopping to check and make sure there are still 3 rows in between. So again, I'm just going to repeat this all the way across, and then I'll flip and do the same thing on the other side. All right, I have picked up all the way around on both sides. So you can see we've got 2 rows of red here and also on the other side. And I've made sure at the edges where all these needles converge. I know you can't really see it in the camera, but I've made sure that none of the stitches have been missed and that these 2 rows or 2 needles align, as in they've picked up the same row. Again, it made it so much easier having these slip stitches here because I could then count to place my first one and then count again to place my second one. So now is the moment we have been waiting for, and I've got some really nice, well, they're not really nice. They weren't like expensive or anything like that, but they're nice and sharp scissors here. I think that's going to be pretty important. My goal is to come along and cut directly in the center here. So there's 3 rows, 3 stitches in between every single one of these. And I want to cut so that, again, I have this waiting for me and then these live stitches that I can continue knitting on to add my extra 2 repeats. So I've never done this before. I don't know exactly how it's going to go, but I'm going to try my hardest to cut in that center row. That way, just in case I haven't picked up exactly in the same rows, I've got a little bit of a buffer, and then I'll spend some time like picking out the leftover yarns and everything. One thing to consider is the beginning of the round. So like for me, I had carried this over. So that may be a little bit of a problem for me because I probably should just go ahead and cut this in the center here. I'm going to think about it for a second, but I think I'm just going to have to cut this here in the center and have a very tiny end to weave in on either side. You can see I left my ends because I wasn't sure if I was going to unravel this, but at this point I can weave these in, and I'm just going to have this as an end for right now. So that's something to consider, but let's start making our cuts. All right, I am going to place my hand here underneath the fabric so that I can really get in there to those stitches. And again, I'm just going to start cutting in the middle there. It doesn't have to be too perfect because I'm not going to be able to salvage any of these rows here. That's why I gave myself a buffer, but I am trying to cut directly in the middle. If I cut too close to either one of these cords, that would be a problem. So I am just going to cut all the way around. It's kind of scary, but it won't be a problem because I've got all my stitches nice and secure on these 2 needles. This right here is the last part, connecting these pieces of the sweater. And there we go. It's totally separated. So this part that comes up next, like I said, you don't have to stress because your stitches are all secure. I'm just going to try to find anywhere here where I'm just going to have to pull out all these little fuzzies, and then I'm going to have to somehow find, there we go. See this strand here? If you can just find it, give it a snip, and then start pulling. You're just going to have to do that quite a lot. Like, see how I have all of this? Oh my gosh, it's getting dark, so it's hard to see. But I've got all of this. I'm just going to have to clean it up. And then I'm going to put all of the long pieces in the trash, get my vacuum cleaner, and get all these little pieces. But this end is going to be easier to do, I think, than this one, because in this direction, the knitting is in reverse. I don't know, maybe it will still pull out. I mean, it still seems to pull. No, that's not super clear. It still seems to pull out fine, but what we're trying to do is get it down to where we just have our stitches here on the needle nicely, like so. And after that, I'm just gonna knit off of this piece. So you don't need to see that. So I'll be back when it's time to put these 2 guys back together. I have knitted my extra 2 repeats. So this was the area where I took things out here, which I marked it because I didn't want to forget. And then these are the 2 extra repeats that I have done. Now, I didn't do all of the 8 rows that would normally be here because, remember, I left a couple rows down here of just plain stockinette. And I don't know for sure, but I think this next part, doing grafting the Kitchener stitch, is going to add an additional row. So I just realized that I left 6 here and I actually left 2 here, so that's already 8. I probably should have just done 5, but I'm gonna test it out first. I don't really know how this is gonna look, and honestly, 1 more row in the very last repeat I don't think is gonna be a huge deal, but I can take it out if needed. One other thing before I show you this part is I was left with a couple things that I can't really explain. I have this short end that I knew was going to happen because I had been carrying my contrast color. But then I also ended up with I know you can't really see it here, but a blue short end here and a blue like short end down here somewhere. I don't know. I don't really know why or how to explain why that was, but I just had to do some fudging for that, and maybe if I ever have to do it again I will understand better like where that actually comes from. But just pay attention if you're doing this to any snipped ends that may have happened. On this side, because I was going in the direction of knitting, what I actually ended up doing is just tinking back, actually it was down here, tinking back like 15 stitches, adding in a new piece of yarn and just knitting in it. That way, where that short end was at the beginning of the round was what I undid. So I had a tail at that point, and then adding in a new yarn to knit it across left me just with tails everywhere, but not having that one tiny short end. So I don't know. Anyway, I am ready to put these 2 pieces back together. So I am at the beginning of the round here. And then for this piece, I have just on the one side, I've slipped so that I am like, I slipped half of the stitches over so that I'm at the beginning of the round because I want to be in the same place. And this is going to be a little wacky, but basically I just want to get the 2 pieces up next to each other, just like a toe of a sock, where I've got my body pieces here on the front needle, and then my ribbing stitches here as like my back needle. The right side is facing out, so the right side is facing me, the right side is facing out, and it's gonna attach into a nice, beautiful knitted seam that hopefully will look pretty seamless. I don't really know exactly how that's going to look. Like again, I think it's going to add a row, and I also don't know if it's going to align. I think it may shift things slightly, but I'm hoping that's not a big deal since we're reattaching it right before the ribbing where things change anyway. So I'm just going to go for it. I've got a tapestry needle here ready to go, and I have my yarn still attached, so I'm just going to break my yarn. I'm going to leave, technically you need a length like 4 times the width of what you're doing, but that would be very, very long. So I'm just going to take 4 times the body here, and I guess 4 times half of the body. And that's still a really long string, but it's not quite what I'm gonna need. And knowing that I can just add more in whenever I need it. I'd rather like have to weave in a couple extra ends than be pulling a 6-foot string through every single stitch. You can just join your yarn in where needed. Okay, so let's actually do this. I'm not going to go into great detail on how to do the actual grafting Kitchener stitch because I do have a way better tutorial that's going to be much clearer on the toe of a sock. So I'll try to remember to link that as well. But yeah, we're just going to put our 2 pieces here together. This is so awkward. Hopefully it gets easier. Let's just do a few. I'm trying to get everything out of the way here. Let's just do a few here and see how it looks. Now I've done a little bit. You can just see it there where I have started right here. I haven't gone super far, just grafting things. Not gonna lie, the beginning was really difficult with all these needles in the way, but I did find out if my like resting needles over here, if I pull them up onto the cords, let them hang in the back, that tends to keep them a little more out of the way so that I can just focus on using these 2 needles and my darning needle, of course. So I have learned a couple things, like I said, and it looks like it's working. Oh my gosh. It looks like it's working out just fine. I know it's a little hard to see there, but I'm being very careful to keep the tension of my grafting similar to the tension of my stitches. It is adding a row. So if I count here, I actually have 9 stitches in between, or 9 rows in between the last color work and this instead of 8 like all the other sections, but I honestly think it looks totally fine, so I'm not going to spend time taking out a row. And then there was one more thing I feel like, oh, I thought it was going to be misaligned, and I know you really can't see the stitches here, but it actually doesn't look misaligned at all. Like I thought like the stitches down below would look like a half stitch off, and I know it's really, you really can't see it, but it doesn't look bad at all. So I don't know if there's much else to show, except I'm going to do this all the way around, painstakingly around, but it is going to save me time. Instead of having to spend 10 to 12 hours re-knitting this, I'm only going to spend about probably an hour grafting this back together. It probably took me another hour or so to get everything separated. So I think in the end, it was well worth spending the time doing this. I've got the sweater on. So how did you feel after watching that tutorial? I will say that I wasn't worried about cutting it because I felt so secure with having those 2 spots with the stitches on the needle, and cutting it and reattaching it wasn't a problem except for the beginning of the round. And I still don't know why I ended up with so many short pieces of yarn. I don't know if I will have to do this again in the future or what that will look like, but I am gonna be keeping that in mind if I ever do have to do this again, because that part made it tricky. And I still haven't put in all the strings yet. I just finished doing the grafting last night. So I still have some ends to tuck in. I also realized it's just so funny. I did not notice this until like the end of the day at Rhinebeck, but I never went back and cut, I never went back and cut any of the ends here inside the sleeve. Like literally all the ends going all the way up my sleeve are longer than this, but you don't feel them. They're just there. I think, oh, see, look. I think because it's already close enough to like the body that it's not like moving around and tickling me, but I do need to go and cut those. So here is what it looks like now. And this may not be a perfect representation because I'm not wearing jeans, but I mean, the jeans that I was wearing, I think were about this high, and you saw the sweater before was like up here. And now I think it is a very nice length. So I added about 2 inches because I added from this color work part down to the ribbing. And definitely right now, there's a noticeable, I think you can kind of see it where it indents. There's a noticeable difference where I started knitting again, because all this part is blocked, this is blocked, and then I've done new knitting and also grafting, which is not the same gauge. So that's all a little bit funny looking. Let's see, can you see that? I am so shocked how seamless this looks. There's a bit of a tension difference, of course, where I did the grafting, but everything lines up as far as the stitches go, as far as the V's go, and I'm so happy with it. It wants to flip up like this, which actually, hey, that's a good representation of how short it was before. Now it is much longer. But I feel like my next steps are gonna make it all seem perfectly seamless again. I'm gonna finish weaving in all the ends. I'm gonna trim everything inside this, and I'm gonna block this sweater one more time. I don't know what blocking number this is exactly, but this sweater has been blocked many times because I blocked it first for the yoke, and then I blocked it again. It's at least the 3rd time. I don't even know. But I'm gonna do all of that, and I think it will be totally fine. If it's not fine, I'll bring it back in and show you what I've done. But for now, I think this is the end of the Alpenglow podcast segment. You're not gonna see it again in the podcast unless I just happen to be wearing it, which is unlikely. It's not a very like cozy around the house sweater because of the texture of the yarn, but I'm very proud of myself for not only just the actual repair because it was challenging, but taking the time to go back and do something and actually fix something is not something that last year Natalie would have done. And so I have to stop and recognize that as an improvement, and I'm proud of myself. Oh, I'm sorry, I wanted to share about the yarn. Now that this project is done, provided everything works out when I block it, I am gonna like block it and make sure nothing is, you know, that it still fits great and all of that. But I have so much leftover yarn. I have a full skein. These are small skeins. They're only like, I think they're maybe 50 grams, but I have a whole untouched skein that I will offer up to somebody in my membership and see if they would like to use this yarn, because I don't have a use for it anymore. But look at this, I have, this whole bag is full of yarn from this sweater. So I've got tons, 3 separate bits of that dark yarn still. I have 2, because I bought 2 skeins of this purple, which ended up being a good thing. I don't know where the other bit is, but I've got quite a bit of purple left. I'll probably, because of the same yarn, I'll probably offer that up too with that other skein. And then of course I've got a ton of this. I do really love this color. I'll probably hang on to this for a bit just because Brianna, the Little Wolf Knits, dyed this for me like a little bit brighter than her other ones. So I do really love that. So that may be a stay and stash kind of thing. And then I've got quite a bit of Spin Cycle Unicorn left, which is probably another one to hang on to just because it's a yarn that you can't just get anywhere. But I don't know, I haven't decided yet. And then everything else in here, these are all swatches. Do you remember this? It took so many swatches to figure out this sweater. I mean, I'm so glad I didn't go with this because this just ended up being so great. But it's so funny going, here's another one. Actually, that was a false start on the sweater. It's just so funny, like at the end of a project, going through everything and figuring out what to do with all of this stuff is something that I, again, am getting better at and getting less like hanging on to my little trophies of like things that I finish. I'm like, I don't need to hang on to those. This is the trophy. The sweater is done. I can let go of everything else. But yeah, so I hope that tutorial was helpful. And that's all I have to say about this. Let's move on to the next thing. I have some news for you. So first, the new video this week is the West Knits MCal Part 2. So there are 2 parts, 2 vlogs, very long, over an hour vlogs of my whole process with the West Knit shawl, from getting the yarn kit and talking about what's in there to deciding how I'm going to finish my shawl. So it's all over these 2 over an hour videos. So put them on like a podcast, like you're just going to watch in the background or skip around. I've got chapters in both of those videos, but the final part is now out. So please enjoy those videos. I had a lot of fun making them. Basically, it kind of felt like Vlogmas. Like I was recording almost daily, not as much as Vlogmas, but like little segments daily for a month. And those are videos that I actually edited myself. Kent is usually my editor, but I told him, like, I've been thinking about this for so long. I've been thinking about how I want it to look at the end. So just let me do these videos. And so I put a lot of heart and soul into them. I hope you enjoy them. And that's a wrap on the West Knits MCal. It feels really, really good. Coming up, I am going to be going away this weekend for a short period of time, like barely 24 hours or barely over 24 hours, to visit my friend Amy and Brianna in New Jersey. And so I'm going to be vlogging because we're going to be knitting, we're going to go to a yarn store, we're going to see Brianna's trunk show. She's a Little Wolf Knits. So I think that's going to be really fun. And also later after that, I'm going to be sharing my Advent plans, and Vlogmas is going to be coming up sooner than we think. I mean, November I think is going to go by pretty darn fast if it's the same as all the other months, which technically it kind of is because it's, you know, all months are 30, 31, or 28 days. But yeah, all of that is coming up in the future. Okay, Sockmas is the next make-along coming up here, and it starts on Friday, November 25th. This is a sock make-along. You can knit or crochet socks, and all of the details are going to be in the info page that I have linked below. But I want you to put one date in your mind, and that is the start date, November 25th. It is a Friday, the Friday after American Thanksgiving, which is typically called Black Friday for shopping. So don't do that. That's too much shopping and getting out in the crowds. Stay home with me and get on YouTube at 12 p.m. Eastern time with me, and we'll have a cast on party together. So it is going to be recorded if you can't make it, but it would be fun if you're able to come live, cast on your socks with me, and we're just going to knit and chat and enjoy kind of what feels like more the official start to the holiday season. And then another date to put in your mind is actually coming up much sooner. And that is the holiday bonus package that is going on sale. So I have put together a package that is a Sockmas and Vlogmas crossover. There are 5 live events, 2 Zoom events, and 2 YouTube events, and 1 movie night, as well as a Discord, which is a community chat place. That's all going to be part of this holiday bonus package, and that goes on sale Friday, November 11th. So as you're watching this, that may have already passed, but don't sweat. There's lots and lots of space in this package, and it's going to be on sale for just over 2 weeks. I'm going to close it on Sunday, November 27th at midnight because our first event is on November 29th. We're going to do a Zoom live with our 2 Sockmas sponsors and get to learn more about them and their businesses. The other things included are a Zoom live with Denise, who is Earth Tones Girl. She is a prolific sock teacher, so we're going to learn so much from her and get to know her more. And then we're going to do some Vlogmasy things with myself and Kent. We're going to go around New York City. We're going to get to see the Rockefeller tree. We're going to see the menorah lighting. We're going to go to Central Park. We're going to go to some of the holiday markets. It is going to be so much fun. I cannot wait. And then the final thing is a movie night that we're going to, vote together in the Discord group and talk about a movie. Anyway, it's a $25 package. It includes 5 events and a Discord. All the information is down below. And one last thing, also on sale during the same time period are 2 of my sock classes. I have the Perfect Fit Socks course that is on sale for the last time this year. It's also the last time that I'm going to do a live component for the Perfect Fit Socks course, which just means that we're all starting around the same time. I have a Discord just for Perfect Fit Socks that you have lifetime access to. You're able to ask me questions and go through it together. The future of the Perfect Fit Sock course looks more like a package where you buy it and get it and work through it on your own. You'll still be able to email me. You'll still be able to drop comments on videos, and I'll be checking in on those, but it won't be quite the same where it's like we're all going through it at the same time. So that option is still there for you if you are looking to purchase it in the future, but just know that if you did want that live component, and also I have all of the past, what do we call them, workshops are included in this sales period. And Perfect Fit Socks has an additional bonus. The holiday bonus package that I just talked about is going to come with that at no additional cost when you get it during this time period. And if Perfect Fit Socks is not something you're looking for, but you do want to learn about the Fish Lips Kiss Heel, that is my mini course, and I do have that on sale as well. And again, it comes with the holiday bonus package at no additional cost. So this is the perfect time to get either one of those sock courses if you have been thinking about them. And if you're like, no, I'm good, I can do my socks, I don't need the courses, then the holiday bonus package is for you, because it's going to be all about community and having fun social events and just having a good time. I have a gift option for the holiday bonus package as well if you want to give one of your knitting friends or crochet friends an early Christmas gift or another holiday gift or a birthday gift or whatever. That is an option for you as well. All the information and details on those things are in the different links down below. And if you have any questions, please just let me know. this past week, I had a few fun adventures out of the house, the most fun of which was my friend Vanessa came into the city on her way back home. She was visiting family, and we went to Knitty City, which is a yarn store in the Upper West Side, and I was able to get yarn that I needed for knitted knockers. So this is a project I'm hoping to cast on this week. I got Cascade Ultra Pima in some like neutral skin tone colors. So I've got those. I had them wind them, can't speak. I had them wind them because I don't love winding cotton. So those are set and ready to go for me to cast on some knitted knockers. I'm probably gonna start them maybe tomorrow, maybe tonight. I don't quite know yet, but I'm starting them very, very soon because I don't have really anything else going on right now. So that was fun. We got lunch. We went to Knitty City and walked back across the city because it was a nice day and it was great. Also this weekend, Kent and I went to the movies. We went and saw Black Adam, and I knitted on my hat. That's when I got 1 inch done on my hat. And it was okay. This is my movie review for Black Adam. Disclaimer is that I am a Marvel person and that is my bar. So I'm not so into the DC universe and I don't know as much about it, which makes me, I think, not the greatest judge of the movie. But I will say that it seemed like it was trying to be Marvel and it was like so close, but not quite there. There were so many jokes and stuff in the movie that were funny, but the timing was not great. And I think, again, I'm just really critical of it because the Marvel movies, I'm a big fan of the Marvel movies and I think they do such a great job, especially with Spider-Man. I think Spider-Man's my favorite right now. Or maybe the Guardians, I don't know. But I love the humor in music and stuff like that, pop culture in movies. And it was so close. So it was still a good movie, but it was not a great movie. So if you're a big DC fan, definitely go see it. But if you're like, then maybe skip this one. We are very excited to see Black Panther though this week. I'm super excited for that. Other than that, we haven't really done much. We're kind of laying low because we did so much traveling in September and of course October we went to Rhinebeck, and we have a bunch of people coming to visit us in December. So we're laying low, trying to just not do too much, build up a little bit of savings so we can party in December when all of our friends come, which is going to be fun because we're going to be doing Vlogmas then as well. Speaking of, we took down all of our Halloween decorations and took them over to our storage unit. We have a very small 4-foot by 5-foot storage unit, and we keep our decorations in our suitcases there and some other things like boxes, empty boxes for like our computers and things. But we went there, we put the Halloween tub away. We got the Christmas tub. We also have a small Christmas tree and a Christmas village. So we grabbed those things and brought them back home and planned to decorate over the weekend. But the weather was so warm. It was like in the 70s. We just didn't feel like decorating. So everything is clean. The slate is ready for Christmas decorations, but we just haven't gotten quite there yet. Not quite ready. So they're just sitting on the floor ready for us to decorate when the mood is right. Yeah, I thought we would have decorated already, but that's okay. It will come. So watching, listening, and reading, I finished The 7 Husbands of Evelyn, Hugo, and it was a good book. I did enjoy it. It didn't make me feel quite the same as the other book by Taylor Jenkins Reid that I read, which was Daisy Jones and the Six. Like that book I was kind of like at the end, but I feel like The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo really was a good book. It had an ending, it felt final, you felt a sense of relief, and so I liked it. It was good. And then I immediately started my next book, which is the third in a trilogy of the Inheritance games, and this one is called The Final Gambit, and it is by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. And when I was looking up that author's name, I found that there's actually another book. I don't know if it just came out because it hasn't come up when I was Googling before, but this is the third book. I thought this was the end of the trilogy, and I see that there's another one. I think it's called like the Hawthorne Legacy or Hawthorne Brothers or something like that. So maybe it's a prequel, I don't know. But I love this world that Jennifer Lynn Barnes has created. It's a young adult book. It's about a girl who has nothing, who inherits billions of dollars, and then the games that the person that gave her the money like has her and others go through to find out like all these dark secrets about the family. And it's great. It's light, it's fun, and I really enjoy it. I guess there's some parts about it that aren't super light, but it's not like as dark as, well, I think before that I had read Verity by Colleen Hoover, and that's a really dark book. So yeah, if you're comparing it to something like that, it's not dark in the slightest. So it's really good. I'm loving it. I literally am sitting, eating my dinner at night going, I can't wait to go to bed because I want to read this book. So highly recommend them. And then as far as watching, we finished Daybreak on Netflix, and kind of disappointed because it was not renewed, because I think they filmed it pre-COVID and then it just didn't get renewed. And I don't think I realized, I thought it was a new show because it was in like Netflix's top 10, and it's not a new show. It had been previously like filmed in 2019, I think. And so yeah, it was a good show though. Definitely like it. And what I was trying to remember last time was Scott Pilgrim. It reminds me of Scott Pilgrim because there's like animation on it and stuff, and it's very silly. So it was a good show. And then of course I've been continuing to watch Love is Blind season 3. I'm almost done, so maybe I should finish that up here kind of soon. I don't know if I will this weekend since I'll be out of town for part of the weekend, but I'm definitely enjoying the drama. And then we tried watching a couple things. We tried watching Blockbuster on Netflix. Again, we were just kind of looking at the top 10 and new things to try, but it's not really the type of show that I tend to like. It's a little too obvious, I think. It's like you can just tell they're like trying to land the jokes. And there are other shows like that. I can't think of them right now, but they're just not for me. It's not the genre that I like. But if you like that very like obvious, I guess it's kind of, it's not really sitcom, but like very like, I don't know how to explain it. You might like the show. It was funny, but just we weren't in the mood for it. And then we watched a movie. I hesitate to recommend this. It is very inappropriate, but it was called Jenkins, and it's all about like basically sort of like a Siri, Alexa kind of device that kind of takes over. Again, highly inappropriate. Please don't watch it around your children, or if you are not into crude humor, you will not like it. But it was very dumb. Like the humor was very silly, and I can't really recommend it, but it was kind of funny. So if you need something just to laugh, watch Jenkins. It was silly. Okay, that brings us to weekly wins. And before I share my weekly wins, don't forget to share your weekly wins in a comment, and I will be selecting one winner to win this beautiful skein of yarn. So my weekly wins. Well, first I want to update you on last week's weekly win, which was that I started a new cleaning routine, and I have since continued the cleaning routine for a full week now. Thank you very much. And it's going really great. I am very much enjoying like having a routine again. I'm following the Tidy Dad, who is an Instagram account and a blog, and he has like Monday you do the bathroom and Tuesday you do the kitchen. So today's Tuesday. Literally this morning I was wiping down the fronts and insides of my cabinets. That's something that like I never do. I would say that I'm an organized person. I'm a tidy person, but cleaning, like the actual cleaning thing, has not always been my strongest suit. And so having this kind of like, this is the room you focus on, this is the time you have kind of thing, has been really, really good for me, at least over the last week. Of course, it takes a while to really make a habit of things, so I'm still going to be testing it out, but so far so good, and I am sticking to it, and it feels great. So here's my actual weekly wins. My actual weekly win is, well, I guess sticking to the routine. That's a really good one. And then the other thing is we took an entire wagon. We have one of those like foldable wagons because when we need to take like our storage unit stuff or whatever, a couple of blocks, we can't carry all of those things. It's very inconvenient. So we have a little foldable wagon. It's great. But we had filled that wagon with things to donate, most of which was clothes. Kent did a big purge on all of his clothes a few weeks ago. And so since then, we've just been like adding stuff to the wagon. So we finally took the time to walk that. It's like a quarter mile away to the Salvation Army and dropped off a whole bunch of stuff. And it just felt so freeing to let go of all those things that we weren't using, give them to somebody else, and have that space back. Like literally in the living room, I was just staring at all of that stuff. So that felt really, really good. And I think I'm just in a cleaning mood. I'm in the mood to purge things, to let go of things, to have less stuff so I can enjoy the things that I have much, much more. All right, that is everything for this week. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.